Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe. I'm a Forbes contributor covering social entrepreneurship and impact investing. And today's guest is Colleen Copple. She is the co-founder of Strategic Applications International, and she's joining us from Nairobi, Kenya today. Colleen is doing some really important work. She helped lead the task force on the president's report on community policing last year. And this report is the central response from the administration on the Black Lives Matter movement and trying to figure out how to reduce crime in the United States. This is really important stuff. But Colleen travels around the world, spends a lot of time in Africa trying to help with similar issues there as well. Colleen, welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
So, Colleen, I want to go back in time for a minute. Tell us about what got you involved in all of this back in Glendale and Salt Lake City back in, what was it, 1990?
Yeah. So I was a young mom with 6 kids living in a very diverse neighborhood in Salt Lake City, which is a rare thing in Utah. And was serving a term on the school board. I had kids in school and thought that's a way to get involved. And we began seeing gang activity emerge in the neighborhood after we closed my neighborhood high school, which I represented on the school board. And so I felt a little bit responsible for that. And as the gang problem emerged, we went from 0 to 200 drive-by shootings in a period of about 12 months. And a lot of people in the neighborhood who could move did move, and everyone else was trying to figure out what to do about it. So I just didn't think it was the right to leave hundreds of kids who went to school across the street from my house to deal with the issue like it's somebody else's problem, but took it on as a project, as a family. We really did, how to figure out how to take back the neighborhood, how to make it a safer place again. And had the privilege of working closely with my police department, with law enforcement officers, but also with a broad range of other social institutions and community groups to respond to the issue. And over a period of about 5 years, took the neighborhood back. And gangs in Utah have ebbed and flowed a little bit, but it's nothing like it was during the initial onslaught that we experienced.
It's interesting. What were the keys to successfully bringing that violence under control?
I think it was that we took a comprehensive approach and we had strong local leadership, and that the neighborhood took ownership of the problem. So it's one thing to say, well, this is the mayor's problem, it's a chief of police problem, it's the governor's problem. It's another thing to say, these are our children, they come from our families, and this is our issue. And once you do that, once you own a problem, you have the ability to impact it. And so I think that's a significant factor, especially when it comes to public safety, community sense of safety and wellness. And then I think we had strong leadership at the mayoral and police department levels. They were very proactive and looking for solutions. And so as a community, emerging community leader, as the mom who was doing something about gangs in the neighborhood, along with a bunch of other folks, we developed a very comprehensive, systemic approach to the issue. It's a complex issue. And the things that put kids at risk are economic, it's English as a second language, it's poverty, it's a whole bunch of factors that need to be addressed. And so in my neighborhood, there were no after-school programs, no summer programs. Kids were just in a pretty vulnerable situation with lots of risk factors. And so we really organized very systemically. So we got all the agencies involved, and we had a comprehensive plan and spent 5 years implementing that plan using community policing principles. So it's partnership, problem solving, and organizational transformation.
So, Colleen, you left that effort rich with valuable experience, and you built a whole career in helping to bridge communities. And in recent years, I think much of the focus of your work, or at least some of it, has shifted from how do we get the police to better protect our communities to how do we get the community to feel safe with the police.
Right.
But it seems to me like part of what I've been reading in your report suggests that the answer is the same answer, right? This community policing approach helps solve both problems. How can that be?
Well, we had a strong community policing initiative in the 90s. That declined somewhat during the early 2000s because of changing dynamics. There was economic downturn. A lot of cities cut police forces and cut back those kinds of positions. We had the militarization of police with military equipment returning from Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan. And there was just a shift in attitude and this emphasis on terrorism, which is necessary, but affected, I think, to some degree, the relationship between police and community. And so really the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing, those 59 recommendations focus on how do we rebuild that sense of trust and legitimacy between police and communities. And it acknowledges that there are areas for improvement. It also really emphasizes those good things that are already happening, what we know about the data that says what's effective.
Oh no, we've lost Colleen. That happens sometimes when we're talking to people on the other side of the world. Because this conversation is so interesting, I'm hopeful that we'll get her back. I know sometimes power isn't reliable and we may have lost her permanently, but we'll give her a minute to come back. Let me take just a minute and point you to the Forbes article for more information. So if you visit Forbes.com/site/Devin Thorpe, you can find this article entitled Entrepreneur Mends Communities to Reduce Violence. And there you'll find in that article a lot of interesting links where you can follow up to learn more about the work that she's doing. There's a link to the report that she's talking about 21st century reporting. There's a link in the article as well to her website and as well to her LinkedIn and Facebook account. So you can connect with her via the article and learn more about the work that she's doing. I do hope that she'll be able to rejoin us. But again, that's only going to be possible if she has power and an internet connection. It looks like she's coming back. Colleen, welcome back.
Yeah, so sorry. I thought we would be good today with the signal.
Yeah,
I was speaking about the role of community policing as an effective approach to strengthening community police relationships, because it's about dialogue and direct communication and problem solving. So the 3 principles of partnerships, problem solving, and organizational transformation. So there's need for some transformation around our policies around use of force and independent investigations of use of force. But we also recognize that the majority of law enforcement officers, well, number one, all of them put their lives on the line every day. And that they're all trying to do the right thing. So we've learned a lot about implicit bias, which is our own unrecognized sort of natural biases that we've accumulated through life that cause us to perceive things the way that we do. Not intentional racism per se, but unintended and things we're unaware of. So there's some need for training around those issues so that law enforcement officers understand their own biases and how it might affect how they police. We need to look at the data so we understand if we have a community in which policing is being applied in an indiscriminate or disproportionate way against communities of color. And we need to especially target those most vulnerable populations who may feel like they have the most reason to distrust law enforcement. So there's, I think, a lot of positive work that's being done to reconstruct the intentionality of those relationships. And I think the best example I saw this last week was after the tragedies of the 2 officer-involved shootings that raised such concern in the community and across the nation again, and then the police officer shootings in Dallas and Baton Rouge. It was Wichita, Kansas, where police were mobilized to help facilitate a peaceful demonstration, a Black Lives Matter demonstration in Wichita, and they ended up, instead of having a demonstration, having a barbecue together, police and the Black Lives Matter movement representatives and community leaders. And I think that's a great example of not to trivialize or minimalize concerns, but to say the way that we create mutual understanding and we find a way forward is to come together and to really hear each other, to stop the rhetoric and to really listen and understand, and then figure out how do we come to a way forward together. And I think we are seeing that in many communities.
You've highlighted a fabulous example of doing it right. I want to ask you a hard, painful question. The 100,000 people, more than 100,000 people, signed a petition on President Obama's website asking that the Black Lives Matter movement be labeled a terrorist organization. Obviously, apparently, many of these people, perhaps all of them and others, blame Black Lives Matter for the shootings in Dallas and Baton Rouge. Do you think Black Lives Matter is to blame for those shootings?
Well, I would say absolutely not. I don't think that they're to blame for the shootings. I think there's harsh rhetoric all around. And I think the degree of hate language that's being used or harshness that's being used around the issue contributes to the problem. But in both of those police shootings, we're talking about a mental health issue. And it was not related at all to the Black Lives Matter movement. And we had members of that group participate on the president's task force. They were extremely articulate about the nature of their concerns. And law enforcement, chiefs of police with 40 years, 50 years in law enforcement listened and understood those concerns. And we came to consensus on every single recommendation in that report. They were allowed to have a minority report and were able to come together with common ground. And so my sense is there's a lot of anger and frustration out there on the side of concern about police-involved shootings. There's also concern that by even saying it or acknowledging it somehow denigrates what law enforcement officers do and attacks all of them. I think there's definitely 90% is middle ground and you have extremes on either end. And so I would just ask people to listen to what the real concerns are and without reacting in anger or frustration, but try to hear and understand and then figure out what we're going to do about it.
Now, you have raised with me in our earlier preliminary discussions your concerns about the way we're dealing with this mental health. You blame these two shootings, the Dallas and the Baton Rouge shootings, on mental health issues. What should we be doing with respect to violence in America and mental health?
Well, the solution to the gun issue, there's a concern about not taking away gun rights, right? So if we don't do that, then we need to make sure people who are healthy are the ones who are able to purchase guns. And so we don't do a good job of screening for mental health issues. And it's a difficult thing, I think, to do, but it's something we need to pay attention to. But we've also, then Congress has also said, well, what we should focus on instead of restricting gun rights is providing more mental health services. Well, they need to ante up because they haven't. Mental health services have been cut. It continue to be cut. They're not being increased. And I think mental health issues for law enforcement, their mental health, post-traumatic stress that they experience from just what they experience on the job. You have military veterans who are dealing with post-traumatic stress and need access to good quality care. You have a wide range of folks out there that are dealing with this issue on different levels. And so if we are not going to control access to guns, and we need to do everything we can to make sure the overall population is healthier and stronger.
Did the report have a recommendation regarding controlling access to guns? Was there any discussion? I can't imagine you had this discussion without talking about it. What recommendations came out of the report?
No, we didn't specifically speak about the gun issue in terms of it putting law enforcement officers at risk or putting communities more at risk. It focused more on the policing aspect, police behavior, I would say, rather than community behavior. I think there's definitely room for a need for dialogue. We certainly saw with the Republican convention after the 2 officer shootings last week, concern about open carry laws, people being able to carry guns and big guns, long guns, without a problem. And how do police tell the difference between who's a legitimate carrier of a gun and who's shooting people? And I think people become more vulnerable when they actually have a gun. The work we did at the National Crime Prevention Council definitely reinforced that an unlocked gun can be the death of your family, that literally the number of accidents involving firearms in the home has significantly more negative impact than any time a gun is used to protect the family. So I think as a community, as a nation, as families, we need to be concerned about and be paying attention to how people are doing and have the resources to get good referral options available to families so that we can reduce the risk, both in families and in communities.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Colleen, we have, we're running out of time, but quickly, I want to just ask you 1 or 2 more questions.
Sure.
You've become a role model to a lot of people, highly respected, not just in the United States, but internationally. Who do you look up to? Who inspires you?
Well, we've had the privilege of working with some amazing people. The most recent Nobel Peace Prize winner, along with Malala, is a gentleman who does rescuing children from human trafficking in India. We've worked with a couple in South Africa, the Loop Commission. It's Harry and Echo Vanderwall, who are doctor and physician's assistant, who operate a mobile medical clinic that serves 1,000 patients a day in a country with the highest HIV/AIDS rate worldwide. We have, even on our own staff here in Kenya, a young woman who's a survivor of gender-based violence who has organized a national movement around not being bystanders when you observe bullying or violence or violence against women occurring. And we also have a woman who's launched a recovery rescue program for street children, who she's rescuing off the streets young girls, 6, 7, 8 years old, who've been abandoned or who have been trafficked by their parents or a boyfriend of a mother. And so the people who are on the ground making a difference every day without recognition, without concern for their own safety or well-being, but who are just compelled. And those are the people we try to come alongside of, those natural leaders, to say, what can we do to help you, and how can we build your capacity to do it better and do it more? And so it's really an honor and a privilege to have that experience every day of working alongside people that we admire and we've come to love and respect.
Well, Colleen, I really appreciate you sharing that, and those are great examples of role models. Before you go, please tell people how they can connect with you and learn more about the work you're doing.
Sure. You can go to our website for Strategic Applications International. You can Google us, but we're at www.sai-dc.com.
Fantastic. Well, again, Colleen, thank you very much for being here with us. We wish you every success in your work ending violence around the world.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Devin.
All righty. Let's do some good.